This video has been developed based on the differences from the Euro V version of D01 engine and the footage of the Euro V version of D01 engine are used, if they do not affect the repair and dismantling procedures and effects. Table of comparison of differences between Euro V and Euro VI.
Notes for D01 engine major overhaul. When the engine is being overhauled, the engine must be shut down and wait for cooling. Staff should wear safety shoes, goggles, and gloves to ensure personal safety. When removing cylinder cover bolts, oil sump bolts, or shell bolts, disassemble in pairs according to the cross-verse fair and then near to prevent parts from deformation during disassembly, leaving any hidden troubles. Axial neck data and cylinder neck data should be tested cylinder by cylinder as required. Proper use of special tools for disassembly and installation. In the course of fuel tubing maintenance operations, the operating environment should be as far as possible away from the source of fire. After the tubing is disassembled, seal the tubing joints to prevent foreign objects from entering. When decomposing the engine, it is necessary to avoid damaging the fitting surfaces of various parts. During maintenance, the disposable gasket, O-ring, and the oil seal, as well as all the failed parts, must be replaced. Do not overbend the wire. Do not operate rudely, so as not to damage the electrical components during disassembly. Clean and inspect the parts thoroughly before repair or replacement. Engine accessories, exhaust system removal. Tips: all sealing rings or gaskets should be replaced to avoid leakage. Step 1.
Remove low-pressure EGR and post-treatment connecting board.
Step 2.
Disconnect connecting hose of DPF differential pressure sensor.
Step 3.
Disconnect connecting hose of differential pressure sensor.
Step 4. Clamp between the treatment system and the supercharger. Step 5. Removing the fixing bolts of after-treatment system. And remove the after-treatment system. Step 6.
Disconnect connecting pipe of differential pressure sensor.
Step 7.
Disconnect cooling water pipe.
Step 8.
Remove fixing bolt of low-pressure EGR. And remove low-pressure EGR.
Step 9. Remove fixing bolts of heat shield of supercharger. And remove heat shield of supercharger. Step 10. Remove the 6-flow cylinder head bolts in the heat insulation cover of the valve chamber and remove the heat insulation cover of the valve chamber. Step 11. Remove the fixing bolts at both ends of the supercharger oil inlet pipe weldment and remove the supercharger oil inlet pipe weldment. Step 12. Removing fixing bolts at both ends of supercharger oil return pipe weldment and remove supercharger oil return pipe weldment. Step 13. Remove fixing bolts of EGR connecting pipe and take down EGR connecting pipe. Step 14. Remove the nuts and bolts that connect the supercharger and exhaust manifold and remove the supercharger and gasket. Step 15. Remove fixing nuts of exhaust manifold and remove exhaust manifold and gasket. Step 16.
Remove fixing bolt of exhaust pipe of water jacket and remove the water jacket exhaust pipe.
Exhaust system installation. Step 1.
Install water jacket exhaust pipe. Install fixing nut and tighten to 20 ± 2 Newton meters.
Step 2. Install exhaust manifold gasket and exhaust manifold to cylinder block. Install fixing nuts and tighten them to 30 ± 3N.M. Step 3.
Install EGR connecting pipe and fixing bolt and tighten to 23 ± 3 Newton meters.
Step 4.
Install turbocharger and gasket. Install nut and bolt for booster and exhaust manifold. And tighten to 30 ± 3 Newton meters.
Step 5.
Install welded parts of booster oil return pipe. Install fixing bolt. And tighten to 9 ± 1 Newton meters.
Step 6.
Install welded parts of booster oil inlet pipe. Install fixing bolt and tighten to 20 ± 2 Newton meters.
Step 7. Install the valve cover heat shield and fixing bolts and tighten them to 5 ± 1N.M. Step 8. Install the supercharger heat shield and fixing bolts and tighten them to 9 ± 1N.M. Step 9.
Install low pressure EGR. Install fixing bolt and tighten to 23 Newton meters.
Step 10.
Connect cooling water pipe.
Step 11.
Connect connecting pipe for differential pressure sensor.
Step 12.
Post-installation processing assembly. Post-installation processing fixing bolt.
Step 13.
Install fixing clamp for post-treatment system and booster.
Step 14.
Connect connecting hose for differential pressure sensor.
Step 15.
Connect connecting hose for DPF differential pressure sensor.
Step 16.
Connect connecting board for low pressure EGR and post-treatment.
Step 17. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Integrated EGR assembly dismount. Tips: all sealing rings or gaskets should be replaced to avoid leakage. Step 1. Disassemble the EGR connection pipe fixed bolt and remove the EGR connection pipe. Step 2. Remove the EGR and fixing bolts of intake manifold and remove the connection pipe. Step 3. Remove the clamp of EGR water outlet pipe and disconnect the connection between EGR water outlet pipe and engine water inlet pipe T. Step 4. Remove the clamp of EGR water inlet pipe and disconnect the connection between EGR water inlet pipe and thermostat housing assembly. Step 5. Remove fixing bolts of integrated EGR assembly and remove integrated EGR assembly. Integrated EGR assembly installation. Step 1. Install the integrated EGR assembly and fixing bolts and tighten them to 23 ± 3N.M. Step 2. Install the EGR connection pipe and gasket and tighten the fixing bolt. Step 3. Install EGR connection pipe and fixing bolt and tighten them to 23 ± 3N.M. Step 4. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 5. Install EGR water outlet pipe to engine water inlet pipe T-junction and fix it with clamp. Step 6. Install EGR water inlet pipe onto thermostat housing assembly and fix it with clamp. Intake system removal. Tips: all sealing rings or gaskets should be replaced to avoid leakage. Because the high-pressure oil pump blocks the removal of the fixing bolts at the front end of the intake manifold, the high-pressure oil pump shall be removed before removing the intake manifold. Step 1. Disconnect the intake pressure sensor connector and fixing clip. Step 2. Remove fixing bolts at both ends of EGR connecting pipe and remove connecting pipe and gasket between EGR and intake manifold. Step 3. Remove fixing bolts of oil dipstick assembly and pull out oil dipstick assembly. Step 4. Remove fixing bolts of intake manifold and remove intake manifold and electronic throttle assembly. Air intake system installation. Step 1. Install the intake manifold seal ring to the intake manifold. Step 2. Install intake manifold and fixing bolts. And tighten them to 25 plus minus 3N, point M. Step 3. Install the oil dipstick guide pipe and fixing bolts. And tighten them to 9 plus minus 2N, point M. Step 4. Install EGR connecting pipe, tips. Note to install metal gasket between EGR connecting pipe and EGR assembly matching flange. Install fixing bolts and tighten them to 23 plus minus 3N, point M. Step 5. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 6. Connect the intake pressure sensor connector. Engine peripheral parts. Engine harness removal. Step 1.
Disconnect connectors of differential pressure sensor and a DPF differential pressure sensor separately. Remove wiring harness. Remove fixing bolt of differential pressure sensor bracket. Removal of fixing bolt of urea injection pipe bracket. Disconnect post-temperature connector of water-air intercooler. Disconnect connector of vacuum solenoid valve.
Step 2.
Remove connecting hose from booster to intercooler. Remove connecting hose from intercooler to the electronic restrictor. Remove fixing bolt of water-air intercooler. Remove water-air intercooler. Remove fixing bolt for bracket of water-air intercooler. Remove fixing bracket of water-air intercooler.
Step 3. Remove the crankshaft position sensor connector. Remove the harness fixing clip and remove the harness. Step 4. Remove the turbocharger bypass valve controller connector. Remove the harness fixing clip and remove the harness. Step 5. Remove the EGR control valve connector. Remove the harness fixing clip and remove the harness. Step 6. Remove the camshaft position sensor connector. Step 7. Remove 4 fuel injector connectors. Remove the harness fixing clip and remove the harness. Step 8. Remove the rail pressure sensor connector and remove the harness. Step 9. Remove the throttle sensor connector and remove the harness. Step 10. Remove the water temperature sensor connector. Remove the harness fixing clip and the harness. Step 11. Remove the connector of fuel pressure sensor. Remove the harness fixing clip and the harness. Step 12. Remove the generator harness connector. Remove the harness fixing clip and the harness. Step 13. Remove the connector of fuel pressure control valve. remove the fixing clamp and the harness. Step 14. Disconnect the plug-in, a preheating plug, and intake pressure sensor harness, and remove the harness. Step 15. Remove the PVC valve connector and remove the harness. Step 16. Remove the sensor connector of high-pressure oil pump. Remove the wire harness. Step 17.
Disconnect connector of integrated EGR component sensor.
Step 18.
Remove connector of low-pressure EGR control valve. Remove connector of EGR downstream temperature sensor. Remove engine wiring harness assembly.
Fuel supply system removal. Tips. Since the timing belt drives the high-pressure fuel pump pulley to rotate, remove the timing belt from the high-pressure fuel pump before removing the high-pressure fuel pump. Step 1. Remove the fuel injector return pipe in turn. Tips. After the fuel return pipe is removed, the fuel return outlet of the injector must be sealed with a protective cover to prevent pollutants from entering. Step 2. Loosen fixing nuts at both ends of 1, 2, 3, and 4 high-pressure fuel pipes. And remove 1, 2, 3, and 4 high-pressure fuel pipes. Step 3. Remove fixing bolts of fuel injector press plate. And remove fuel injector press plate and fuel injector. Step 4. Remove the fixing bolts of high-pressure fuel pipe 5 clamp. Loosen the fixing nuts at both ends of high-pressure fuel pipe 5 and remove high-pressure fuel pipe 5. Step 5. Remove the high-pressure fuel rail return pipe fixing clamp. Pull out the high-pressure fuel rail return pipe. Step 6. Remove the high-pressure fuel pump inlet pipe fixing clamp. Pull out the high-pressure fuel pump inlet pipe. Step 7. Return the high-pressure fuel pump return pipe fixing clamp. Pull out the high-pressure fuel pump return pipe. Step 8. Remove the fixing bolt of the fuel pipe assembly and remove the fuel pipe assembly. Step 9. Remove fixing bolts of high-pressure fuel rail and remove high-pressure fuel rail. Step 10. Rotate the fuel pump pulley to find the locating hole. Insert the locating pin. Remove the fixing bolt of the fuel pump pulley. And take out the fuel pump pulley. Step 11. And remove the connecting flange nut of high-pressure fuel pump pulley. Drive out the connecting flange of pulley with long bolt. Take down the high-pressure oil pump belt flange and location pin. Step 12. Remove fixing bolts of high-pressure fuel pump and remove high-pressure fuel pump. Removal of peripheral parts. Tips. Since a high-pressure fuel pump is installed on the accessory support assembly, remove the high-pressure fuel pump before removing the accessory support assembly. Step 1. Remove fixing clamps at both ends of the hose from thermostat to T-joint and remove the hose. Step 2. Remove fixing bolts of thermostat housing assembly and take down the thermostat housing assembly. Step 3. Loosen the hose and clamp on the T and pull out the hose. Step 4. Remove the fixing bolts of the T-joint of the engine water inlet pipe and remove the T-joint of the engine water inlet pipe. Step 5. Remove fixing bolts of generator. Remove the generator. Step 6. Remove the fixing bolts of the accessory tensioner bracket. And remove the bracket of the accessory tensioner. Step 7. Remove fixing bolts of accessory support assembly and remove accessory support assembly. Step 8. Remove fixing bolts of air compressor bracket assembly and remove air compressor bracket assembly. Step 9. Remove fixing bolts of fuel cooler module. And remove fuel cooler module. Step 10. Remove fixing bolts of crankshaft position sensor and remove crankshaft position sensor. Step 11. Remove fixing bolts of fuel switch and rotate and take out fuel switch. Peripheral parts installation. Tips: all sealing rings or gaskets should be replaced to avoid leakage. Step 1. Install the T-joint and fixing bolt of engine water inlet pipe. And tighten them to 23 ± 3N.M. Step 2. Install the thermostat housing assembly and fixing bolts and tighten them to 23 ± 3N.M. Step 3. Install the hose from thermostat to T-joint and fix it with clamp. Step 4. Install the fuel switch and fixing bolts and tighten them to 18 ± 2N.M. Step 5. Install the crankshaft position sensor and fixing bolts and tighten them to 4.5 ± 1N.M. Step 6. Install fixing bolts of fuel cooler module. And tighten them to 25 ± 3N.M. Step 7. Install accessory bracket assembly and fixing bolt. And tighten it to 40 ± 4N.M. Step 8. Install the air compressor bracket assembly and fixing bolts and tighten them to 25 ± 3N.M. Step 9. Install the generator and fixing bolts and tighten them to 50 ± 10N.M. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Installation of fuel supply system. Step 1. Install high-pressure fuel pump and fixing bolts and tighten them to 27 ± 3N.M. Step 2. Install the connecting flange and nut of high-pressure fuel pump pulley. Turn the connecting flange of the belt pulley to make the high-pressure fuel pump at the top dead center position of the cylinder 1, fuel injection. Insert the locating pin and fasten the nut of the connecting flange of the high-pressure fuel pump pulley to 80 ± 5N.M. Step 3. Install the high-pressure fuel pump pulley Step 4. Turn the high-pressure fuel pump pulley anti-clockwise to the limit position and tighten the bolts to 25 ± 3N.M. Step 5. Install fuel injector and pressure plate. Install bolts and tighten them to 38 ± 4N.M. Step 6. Install the high-pressure fuel rail and fixing bolts and tighten them to 28 ± 3N.M. Step 7. Install 4 high-pressure fuel pipes in turn. And tighten the nuts at both ends to 28 ± 3N.M. Step 8. Install the high-pressure fuel rail inlet pipe and clamp bolts and tighten the nuts at both ends to 28 ± 3N.M. Step 9. Install the oil return line assembly and clamp. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Engine harness installation. Step 1. Install all harness connectors onto corresponding sensors to ensure that the harness is fixed firmly without contact and friction with moving and high-temperature components. Step 2. Install the water-air cooler bracket and fixing bolts and tighten them to 25 plus minus 3N.M. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 3. Connect the hose, a pressure difference sensor, and secure it with clamps. Step 4. Install connector of pressure difference sensor. Step 5. Install fixing bolts of water-air cooler and tighten them to 15 plus minus 2N.M. Piston, connecting rod, piston check. Step 1. Use the outside micrometer to measure the diameter of the big point of the piston. Tips. The measurement standard of piston big point diameter is 12 millimeters from the bottom of piston skirt to the vertical direction of piston pin. Standard of piston big point diameter 81.975 plus minus 0.009 millimeters. Step 2. Use a caliper to measure the diameter of the piston pinhole and the diameter standard of piston pinhole 25.997 to 26 millimeters. Step 3. Use a caliper to measure the diameter of the small hole of the connecting rod. The diameter standard of the small end hole 26.008 to 26.018 millimeters. Step 4. Use a caliper to measure the diameter of a piston pin and the diameter standard of piston pin 26.010 to 26.016 millimeters. Step 5. Insert the piston ring into the cylinder and measure the end clearance of each piston ring with a feeler gauge. The first ring should be 0.5525 to 0.9575 millimeter, and the second ring should be 0.6525 to 1.0575 millimeter. Step 6. Install the piston ring into the ring groove and measure the gap between the ring and the ring groove with a feeler gauge. The first ring should be 0.04 to 0.08 millimeter, and the second ring should be 0.03 to 0.07 millimeter. Tips. Before measuring the gap, ensure that the piston ring groove is clean, dry, and free of carbon deposition. Assembly of piston and connecting rod. Step 1. Install the piston pin onto the piston and connecting rod. Tips. Make sure that the forward mark on the piston is the same as the projection on the big end of the connecting rod. Step 2. Install the piston pin circlip into the circlip groove and adjust its opening to the 180-degree position of the piston pin circlip installation hole. Step 3. Move the piston back and forth to check the installation between the piston and the piston pin. Step 4. Install the support spring in the piston ring groove. Tips. When installing the oil ring, the opening and the support spring opening shall be staggered 180 degrees. The second gas ring and the first gas ring shall be installed on the piston in turn. When assembling each piston ring, make the side with words or marks face the direction of piston crown. Installation of piston and connecting rod. Step 1. Measure and record the large and aperture of each connecting rod. Step 2. Measure and record the crankshaft diameter of each diameter. Step 3. Select appropriate upper and lower connecting rod tiles for installation according to connecting rod tile arrangement scheme. Step 4. Use a tool to install the upper and lower connecting rod pads in the connecting rod pad seat and the lower cap seat of connecting rod pads. To make sure that it is placed in the middle, and apply lubricating oil. Step 5. Fill the piston ring groove with engine oil, then rotate the piston ring several times. And rotate the piston ring one by one to make it in the correct position. Tips: the oil ring opening shall be at 45 degrees of the piston pin center line. The second gas ring opening shall be at 90 degrees clockwise of the oil ring opening, and the first gas ring opening shall be at 180 degrees clockwise of the second gas ring. Step 6. Install the piston assembly into the piston installation tool. Tips: so that the skirt of the piston is about 20 millimeters away from the installation tool. Install the piston connecting rod assembly. Use a rubber rod or hammer handle to push the top of the piston to the connecting rod big end to contact the crankshaft. Step 7. Install and match the lower cover of connecting rod and avoid any reverse in installation. Install connecting rod bolts evenly and pre-tighten them to 30 ± 3N.M plus 90 degrees ± 9 degrees. Step 8. Rotate the crankshaft for 1 week. Use a feeler gauge to check the axial clearance of the big end of the connecting rod. The axial clearance of the connecting rod shall be 0.09 to 0.30 millimeters. Cylinder wall inspection. Step 1. Observe the cylinder wall for obvious scratches, unevenness, or steps. Tips: if the cylinder wall is very rough, scratched, or convex, replace the cylinder. Step 2. Cylinder measurement method. The cylinder diameter shall be measured by measuring cylinder gauge at positions A and B of cylinders 1, 2, and 3 respectively. Cylinder diameter: 81.005 to 81.015 millimeter. Cylinder head, valve mechanism. Cylinder head removal. Tips: before removal, the intake and exhaust manifold, fuel injector, high-pressure common rail, timing belt, and other accessories shall be removed. Step 1. Remove fixing bolts of valve cover. And remove valve cover. Step 2. Remove fixing bolts of vacuum pump and remove vacuum pump. Step 3. Remove fixing bolts of camshaft gland. and take out intake and exhaust camshaft. Step 4. Remove the hydraulic tappet and roller rocker arm and place them in the container in order. Step 5. Remove the fixing bolts of the cylinder head in the order of first two ends and then the middle. And remove the cylinder head. Valve mechanism removal. Step 1. Use a valve spring compressor to compress the valve spring. And take out the valve clamp. Step 2. Remove the valve spring upper seat. Valve spring. Valve and valve spring lower seat from the cylinder head. Step 3. Use a valve oil seal remover and remove the valve oil seal. Valve mechanism inspection. Step 1. Use vernier caliper to measure the valve spring length to be 44.44 millimeters. Step 2. Use vernier caliper to measure diameter and length of valve. Step 3. Use vernier caliper to measure valve edge thickness, which should be within the standard range. Step 4. Use vernier caliper to measure valve stem diameter, which should be within the standard range. Step 5. Use dial indicator to measure the clearance between valve and valve guide. Step 6. Check the straightness of cylinder head. The limit value is 0.05 millimeter and replace if there is bending. Step 7. Use the printing mud to check whether the width of the valve seat, joint surface, and sealing belt is within the specified range. If it does not meet the standard, carry out the valve seat hinge pin and grinding operation. Tips after hinge pin and grind to check the air tightness of each cylinder valve. Installation of valve mechanism. Tips: all assembly parts shall be thoroughly cleaned before installation. Step 1. When installing valve oil seal, apply proper amount of lubricating oil on the circumference of guide pipe and oil seal assembly inlet. Step 2. Use special tools to press the valve oil seat with the pressing force not more than 400 N between the oil seal base and the conduit is equal to or less than 0.3 millimeters. Step 3. Apply engine oil to the end of valve stem and install it into the intake and exhaust valve. Step 4. Install the valve spring and valve spring upper seat. Step 5. Use a valve spring compressor to compress the valve spring and install the valve lock clamp in place. cylinder head installation. Step 1. Measure the protrusion height of the piston. Measure the longitudinal A and B points of each piston. See the schematic diagram of the top surface of the piston. Take the average value of 8 measuring points of 4 pistons as the grouping value of the cylinder gasket. See the table for the relationship between the protrusion of the piston and the selection of the cylinder gasket. Step 2. Select the appropriate cylinder gasket according to the grouping table. Tips: the cylinder gasket is a one-time part, and it must be replaced with a new one after removal. Step 3. Install the cylinder head and bolts. The bolt should be tightened according to the specified torque. Tips: tighten the fixing bolts of cylinder head in the order of first middle and then both ends. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 4. Apply a proper amount of lubricating oil to the hydraulic tappet and roller rocker arm and install them into the cylinder head one by one according to the removal sequence. Step 5. Apply the lubricating oil to the surface of the camshaft hole on the cylinder cover and the bearing journal of each camshaft. Ensure that the stern notch of the air inlet camshaft is horizontal. The front key slot of the air outlet camshaft stands upward. The process holes of 2 gears stay on a straight line, and the marks on 2 gears align with each other. Step 6. Install and pre-tighten the camshaft bearing cover. Step 7. Apply sealant to the front and rear bearing caps of the camshaft. The sealant line width should be 2 to 3 millimeters. It is required that the sealant line should be even and continuous. Step 8. Tighten the bolts in sequence. First in the middle and then at both ends. The bolt should be tightened according to the specified torque. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 9. Apply silica gel 5900H on the installation surface of valve cover sealing strip and cam bearing cover, and cover the joint with the length of glue line. Step 10. Install the valve cover. Pre-tighten it diagonally and clockwise in sequence, and then tighten the fixing bolts according to the torque of 10 plus minus 1 N.M. Step 11. When installing the vacuum pump to the rear end of cylinder head, tips that the gasket is a one-time part, and a new gasket must be replaced after disassembly and assembly. Installing fixing bolts and tighten them to 9 ± 1 N.M. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Crankshaft and flywheel. Disassembly of crankshaft and flywheel. Step 1. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the bearing bush cover of the connecting rod. To remove the bearing bush cover of the connecting rod and the lower bearing bush. Step 2. Plunge the piston connecting rod assembly by using a rubber bar. Step 3. Install locking tool of flywheel. Step 4. Disassemble the mounting bolt of crankshaft timing gear and take down the crankshaft timing gear. Step 5. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the front oil seal seat of the crankshaft. Remove the front oil seal sheet of the crankshaft by levering it with tools and remove the belt of the oil pump. Step 6. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the oil connecting pipe. To remove the oil connecting pipe. Step 7. Fix the flywheel with the locking tool of flywheel. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the flywheel. And remove the flywheel. Step 8. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the flywheel casing. And remove the flywheel casing. Step 9. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the rear oil seal seat of the crankshaft. And remove the rear oil seal seat of the crankshaft. Step 10. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the main bearing cap. Step 11. Disassemble the main bearing cap. Step 12. Disassemble the thrust plate. Step 13. Disassemble the lower bearing bush of the main shaft. Step 14. Take out the crankshaft. Step 15. Disassemble the thrust plate. Step 16. Disassemble the upper bearing bush of the main shaft. Installation of the bearing of the crankshaft. Step 1. Measure the diameter of each crankshaft and make a record. Step 2. Measure the value of holes of each main bearing bush. Step 3. According to the selected solution of the main shaft bearing bush, select the bearing bush of the shape shadow for installation. Step 4. Install the upper bearing bush of the main shaft in sequence into the bearing bush seat of the main shaft according to the configuration result. Apply 0.2 mg lubricating oil onto the inner surface of the bearing bush and both sides of the thrust plate. Step 5. Install the crankshaft into the cylinder body and apply lubricating oil. Step 6. Rotate the left thrust plate and right upper thrust plate respectively. Ensure that the end surface and the bottom surface of the bearing bush stand in a line, and the side with an oil trough of the thrust plate faces the crankshaft handle. Tips: it is not permitted that it is installed in a reverse direction. Step 7. Install the lower bearing bush of the main shaft into the bearing bush seat of the main shaft in sequence in according to the configuration result. Ensure that the convex part of neither end surface is larger than 0.5 millimeter. Apply moderate lubricating oil on the surface. Step 8. Apply 0.2 milligram lubricating oil to the center of the main bearing journal. Step 9. Assemble the lower thrust plate and number 3 main bearing cap and then install them into the main bearing bush seat. It should be ensured that the side with an oil trough of the thrust plate faces the crankshaft handle. Tips: it is not permitted that it is installed in a reverse direction. Step 10. Install the main bearing 1, 2, 4, and 5 in sequence, ensuring that the mark on the main bearing cap faces forward. Step 11. Tighten the bolt to 65 plus minus 5N.M, plus 90 degrees plus minus 2 degrees in the order from the middle to two ends. It should be ensured that the crankshaft can be rotated smoothly during tightening. Step 12. Apply sealant to the installation surface of the rear oil seal seat of the crankshaft. Tips: the sealant should be applied inside the trench evenly along the trace of the sealant. Sealant applying interruption is not allowed. The sealant line diameter should be 2 to 3 millimeters. The assembly must be finished within 8 minutes after sealant applying. Step 13. Install the rear oil seal seat of crankshaft and tighten the fixing bolts. Step 14. Apply 0.5 milligram of lubricating oil evenly around the lip of the oil seal. Install the oil seal guiding tool on the rear of the crankshaft. Use the oil seal guiding tool to push the oil seal to the position of the oil seal sheet of the crankshaft. And use the installation tool of oil seal to knock the oil seal into place. Step 15. Install the flywheel casing and the fixing bolt. And tighten the bolt to the specified torque. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 16. Install the flywheel and the flywheel bolt and then pre-tighten all the bolts. Install locking tool of flywheel and fixing the flywheel. Please tighten the bolt to 60 plus minus 6N.M plus 90 degrees plus minus 2 degrees. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Tips: please apply a little of thread locking adhesive to threads of each bolt before installation. Inspection of main bearing clearance. Step 1. Disassemble the main bearing cap. Clean the bearing cap and the bearing journal. Step 2. Place a plastic clearance gauge on the bearing journal and inside of the bearing bush in accordance with the width of the bearing. Tips. It should be noted that the plastic clearance gauge must be in the center of the bearing bush. Step 3. Install the main bearing cap and the fixing bolt of the main bearing cap. And tighten the bolt with a torque of 65 plus minus 9.8 N.M. and then further rotate the bolt for 90 degrees plus minus 2 degrees. Don't rotate the crankshaft. Step 4. Disassemble the main bearing cap again. Measure the width of the bearing bush with the plastic clearance gauge. The standard value should be 0.032 to 0.208 millimeters. Measurement of axial clearance of crankshaft. Step 1. Fix the dial gauge and the general dial gauge support on the cylinder body. Step 2. Press the crankshaft to the dial gauge and reset the dial gauge to 0. Step 3. Press tightly the crankshaft in a reverse direction and read the display number. The standard value should be 0.08 to 0.3 millimeter. Tips. Replace the thrust washer if the limit is exceeded. Disassembly of the lubricating system. Step 1. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the oil pan. And disassemble the oil pan with the oil pan disassembling tool. To remove the oil pan. Step 2. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the oil baffle. To remove the oil baffle. Step 3. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the oil pump. Shake the components of the oil pump to make it separate from the location pin. Make the oil pump lean forward and take out the oil pump from the belt. Step 4. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the front oil seal seat of the crankshaft. Remove the front oil seal sheet of the crankshaft by levering it with tools and remove the belt of the oil pump. Installation of lubrication system. Step 1. Put the oil pump assembly and belt on the installation location and pre-tighten the bolt of the oil pump. Step 2. After the belt is installed to a right position, the bolt of the oil pump should be tightened of 20 plus minus 3 N.M. Step 3. Apply sealant to the installation surface of the front oil seal seat of the crankshaft. Tips. The sealant should be applied inside the trench evenly along the trace of the sealant. Sealant applying interruption is not allowed. The sealant line diameter should be 2 to 3 millimeters. The assembly must be finished within 8 minutes after sealant applying. Step 4. Install the front oil seal seat of crankshaft and tighten the bolts. Step 5. Apply 0.5 milligram lubricating oil evenly around the oil seal opening. Rotate the front oil seal of the crankshaft and install it to the front oil seal seat of the crankshaft and press the oil seal to the right position using oil seal installation cooling. Step 6. Place the oil baffle to the installation position. Install the fixing bolt and tighten it to 9 ± 2N.M. Step 7. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 8. Apply sealant to the installation surface of the oil pan. The sealant line diameter should be 2 to 3 millimeters. Tips. The sealant should be applied along the sealant trace. Sealant applying interruption is not allowed. Step 9. Install the oil pan and fixing bolts. And tighten the bolts evenly and symmetrically, 8 ± 1N.M, plus 45 degrees, ± 2 degrees. Step 10. Put the O-shape ring into the oil connecting pipe. Embed the extended part of the O-shape ring into the opening of the connecting pipe slot of the main oil passage. Install the fixing bolt and tighten it to 8 ± 1N.M, plus 45 degrees, ± 2 degrees. Step 11. After tightening the bolt, according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Camshaft. Disassembly of the camshaft. Tips. The timing belt, cylinder cover, vacuum pump, and relevant components should be disassembled before disassembling the camshaft. Step 1. Disassemble the inner hexagonal bolt of the bearing cap of the camshaft. Step 2. The disassembly of camshaft bearing cover shall meet the principle of first middle and then both sides. Loosen the fixing bolt of the bearing cap of all the camshaft for 90 degrees, avoiding break of the camshaft. Step 3. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the bearing cap of all the camshaft respectively, and remove the bearing cap of the camshaft. Step 4. Remove the camshaft of the air inlet and air outlet. Installation of the camshaft. Step 1. Apply the lubricating oil to the surface of the camshaft hole on the cylinder cover and the bearing journal of each camshaft. Step 2. Ensure that the stern notch of the air inlet camshaft is horizontal. The front key slot of the air outlet camshaft stands upward. The process holes of 2 gears stay on a straight line, and the marks on 2 gears align with each other. Step 3. Install and pre-tighten the camshaft bearing cover. Step 4. Apply sealant to the front and rear bearing caps of the camshaft. The sealant line width should be 2 to 3 millimeters. It is required that the sealant line should be even and continuous. Step 5. Tighten the bolts in sequence, first in the middle and then at both ends. The bolt should be tightened according to the specified torque. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Timing mechanism. Timing mechanism disassembly. Step 1. Disassemble the fixing bolt and the fixing clamp of the top cover of the front timing housing. To remove the top cover of the front timing housing. Step 2. Disassemble the accessory idler 3. Step 3. Disassemble the damper pulley assembly. Step 4. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the bottom cover of the front timing housing. To remove the bottom cover of the front timing housing. Step 5. Loosen the fixing bolt of the tensioning wheel to loosen and remove the timing belt. Step 6. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the components of the belt tensioning wheel. To remove the components of the belt tensioning wheel. Step 7. Insert the location pin. Remove the fixing bolt of camshaft timing assembly. Pull out the location pin and take out the timing assembly of camshaft. Step 8. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the rear timing housing. And fixing bolt of the position sensor of the camshaft. To remove the rear timing housing and the position sensor of the camshaft. Step 9. Disassemble the fixing bolt of the water pump assembly and then remove the water pump assembly by levering it with tools. Installation for timing mechanism. Step 1. Apply ethanol glycol to the O-shaped ring of the water pump, ensuring that the O-shaped ring and the whole of the cylinder body are lubricated well. Tips: total coating amount is 0.5 milliliter. Pre-tighten it and then tighten the bolt of the water pump. Step 2. Install the bracket of accessory tensioner and fixing bolt. Step 3. Install the rear timing housing and sensor fixing bolts on the camshaft, and then tighten them to 9 ± 2N.M. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 4. Apply lubricating oil to the surface of the front oil seal of the camshaft. Use tools to install front oil seal of camshaft. Step 5. Install the timing belt pulley and signal panel of the camshaft, and then pre-tighten the fixing bolt. Fix the camshaft to the dead center position of one cylinder of the motor by using lock-up tooling, ensuring that the belt pulley can rotate flexibly. Rotate the timing belt pulley of the camshaft anti-clockwise to the limit position. Step 6. Install high-pressure oil pump and fixing bolt. Install high-pressure oil pump flange connection and nut. Use a locking tool to fix the high-pressure oil pump at the top dead center position of one cylinder. Tighten the high-pressure oil pump and connect the flange nut. Step 7. Install the timing pulley of high-pressure oil pump. Pre-tighten the fixing bolts. Rotate the timing pulley of high-pressure oil pump counterclockwise to the limit position. And tighten fixing bolts of timing pulley. Step 8. Install locking tool of flywheel. Install the belt pulley of crankshaft and tighten the fixing bolts. Remove the flywheel stopper and rotate the crankshaft so that the mark on the belt pulley of crankshaft is aligned with the center of the groove. Step 9. Install the tensioner of the timing belt and locate the hook of the tensioner of the timing belt into the locating slot of the cylinder cover. Make the hexagon hole be at the direction of 8 o'clock and pre-tighten the fixing bolt of the tensioner of the timing belt. Step 10. Install the damper pulley and pre-tighten the fixing bolt. Install the locating tooling so that the positioning hole on the belt pulley of damper is aligned with the top dead center positioning hole of one cylinder. Remove damper pulley. Tips. Ensure that the number 1 cylinder piston is at top dead center and can be determined by the arrow mark of crankshaft pulley. Step 11. Wrap the belt on each belt pulley, ensuring that the belt and each belt pulley fit each other well. Step 12. Rotate the pivot clockwise by using the hexagon hole to adjust the tensioner of the timing belt, ensuring that the pointer of the tensioner of the timing belt is at the right edge of the base. Tighten the fixing bolt of the tensioner, and then the hexagon hole is at the direction of 11 o'clock. Pull out the pin of the tensioning wheel. Step 13. Tighten the bolt of the timing belt pulley of the camshaft and tighten the bolt of the timing belt pulley of the high-pressure oil pump. Step 14. Inspect whether the pointer of the tensioner of the timing belt is within the gap of the base. Tips. If the deviation deviates the scope requirement, the operator should loosen the bolt of the tensioner to adjust the position of the pointer again. Tighten the bolt after alignment and carry out manual motor turning again, ensuring that the position of the pointer is within the gap of the base. Otherwise, adjustment should be repeated. Step 15. Install the locating tooling repeatedly to inspect whether the camshaft and high-pressure oil pump are located on the dead center position. Tips. Repeat the above steps in the case of deviation. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Step 16. Install the bottom cover of the timing housing and fixing bolts and tighten them to the specified torque. Step 17. Install the top cover of the timing housing and fixing bolts. And tighten them to the specified torque. Step 18. Install the damper pulley assembly. Pre-tighten the bolt. Install the flywheel stop dog. And then tighten the fixing bolt of the damper pulley assembly by using torque of 24 plus minus 3N.M. Step 19. Install the accessory idler gear 3 and tighten the fixing bolts to the specified torque. Step 20. After tightening the bolt according to the standard torque, review the tightening torque of bolt and make a reviewed mark. Engine maintenance. Replace engine oil and oil filter. Warning: hot engines and oils can cause severe burns. Skin cancer may result from long-term exposure to used engine oil. Wash with soap and water immediately after using engine oil to protect your skin. Attention! Changing the engine oil must change the oil filter. If engine oil is spilled onto the exhaust system, clean it completely. Otherwise, it will create smoke due to the high temperature. Step 1. Remove oil filling cap counterclockwise. Step 2. Place recycling container. Step 3. Remove the engine drain screw plug and drain the engine oil into the recycling container. Step 4. Remove oil filter cover. Remove oil filter cover and oil filter element. Step 5. Install a new seal ring for the oil filter cover and apply proper amount of lubricating oil to the seal ring. Step 6. Install a new oil filter. Note that the top of the filter element is positioned as a bulge and aligned with the groove in the cover of the oil filter. Check the filter element after installation. The filter element should not rotate. Step 7. Install oil filter cover and oil filter element and tighten oil filter cover. Step 8. After completing the replacement, clean the area with a duster. Step 9. Install the drain screw plug and new gasket, and then tighten the drain screw plug. Step 10. Fill up the engine oil. Attention! Do not use bad engine oil. Do not mix engine oils of different specifications. Step 11. Install oil filling cap. Clean the area with a duster. Step 12. Pull out the oil gauge. Wipe it clean with a non-woven cloth. Install the oil gauge in place again. Pull out the oil gauge again and check the level of the engine oil. Attention! Check if there is any leakage after engine oil is changed. If there is leakage, please find the reason and repair or replace the relevant parts. List of regular inspection and maintenance for D01 engine components.